If a bullet should enter my brain, let that bullet shatter every closet door. Harvey Milk was born in Woodmere, New York on May 22nd in 1930. As a child, Harvey was enchanted by opera and would spend entire days listening to it on the radio. As he grew older, his mother began to let him take the train to the city to see live shows. This was his first introduction to gay men. Harvey knew that he was gay, but he continued to hide it. After graduating the New York State College for Teachers, where he studied math and history, he enlisted in the Navy. He resigned after being asked about his sexual orientation by officials. After the Navy, he moved to Los Angeles to explore the growing gay culture in California, and then to Miami, where he got arrested under a vagrant pervert law, which targeted gay bars and neighborhoods. When he turned 26, he moved back in with his parents in New York and became a high school teacher. Unsatisfied with living on Long Island, Harvey moved to Queens in New York City, where he met Joe Campbell, who was one of his first serious partners. Joe was only 19 at the beginning of their relationship. This relationship eventually failed, and Harvey took on many different occupations and lovers until 1972, when he moved to San Francisco with a young man named Scott Smith. They took residence on Castro Street, which was known for its up-and-coming gay scene. After being discriminated against by homophobic photo developers, Harvey and Scott opened their own store called Castro Camera. Harvey ran for San Francisco's Board of Supervisors for the first time in 1973. He ran as an openly gay candidate, which for the most part was unheard of. Although he had no trouble getting votes in the Castro, he needed to gain support from all over San Francisco. At the beginning of his political career, Harvey didn't change his hippie persona. With his long hair and rugged look, many young San Franciscans found it easy to connect with him. Even with the support of many college students, Harvey still didn't have the numbers he needed to win. Even after this hard loss, Harvey was still determined to win the supervisor position. He decided to take the lead on forming the Castro Village Association for Gay Merchants on Castro Street to help combat the homophobic Eureka Valley Merchants Association that was always trying to silence them. Through this association, Harvey was able to take charge in planning the Castro Street Fair. This fair brought more than 5,000 people to Castro Street and put Harvey back in the spotlight of the media. Because of his work and impact in the Castro, many residents dubbed him the mayor of Castro Street. Harvey ran his second campaign in 1975. He shaved his beard and started wearing suits in an attempt to look more professional. He famously said, "I changed my image, but I haven't changed one word of what I always said." Although his look was more conservative, his views were not. With Castro Camera turning into a neighborhood hangout for young gays, Harvey had a new group of college-age kids eager to help with his campaign. Even with more money and help, San Franciscans weren't ready to elect a gay supervisor. Harvey came in 7th place. After his own campaign failed, Harvey campaigned for George Moscone. Moscone became one of Harvey's biggest allies and eventually made him the first openly gay city commissioner to the Board of Appeals. Harvey, Mayor Moscone, and Harvey's campaign manager, Ann Cronenberg, worked together to pass an amendment that would allow city supervisors to hold elections in their districts instead of the whole city. This enabled Harvey to only need to campaign in the Castro. On January 9, 1978, Harvey Milk was inaugurated as a city supervisor after his third and final campaign. This meant that he became the first openly gay man to hold a political office. His first policy that he passed was the dog poop law to make owners clean up after their pets on San Francisco streets. He wanted to show the city that he was a supervisor for all citizens, not just the gays. Dan White was a Republican supervisor who worked alongside Harvey. When Harvey tried to pass his gay rights ordinance, it was stalled by White's committee. This is when Harvey decided to make a compromise with him. White was trying to pass a bill to keep alternative schools out of his district. His district was a majority of white Christians, and they were afraid that these schools would bring crime to their area. Harvey told him that he would support his bill if he supported his. Dan White spoke in support of Harvey's bill, and it was able to pass through his committee. When the time came for Harvey to keep up his end of the bargain, he voted against White's bill. He didn't want to break his campaign promise of education equality. White voted against Harvey's bill from then on, but it was pointless because the rest of the supervisors all voted in favor. The gay rights ordinance was signed into law by Mayor Moscone that April. Dan White formed an intense grudge against Harvey and voted against everything that he proposed. Mayor Moscone wanted to run for re-election, and he needed to secure the gay vote. To ensure that Harvey would help him, he appointed him as San Francisco's stand-in mayor while he was on holiday. At a press conference, Harvey announced that he was the first openly gay mayor in America. After struggling with living off a supervisor's salary and feeling intimidated by Harvey, Dan White resigned from his position. He began to grow paranoid after people began to tell him that he was making a big mistake. He then went to Mayor Moscone and asked to be reinstated. Harvey talked to Moscone and convinced him not to allow White to become a supervisor again. He dangled the gay vote over Mayor Moscone's head and threatened him with the loss of his re-election.
President of the Board of Supervisors, it's my duty to make this announcement. Both Mayor Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk have been shot and killed.
Jesus Christ!
The suspect is Supervisor Dan White.
On November 27, 1978, Dan White jumped through a basement window and snuck into a mostly empty city hall. He marched up to Mayor Moscone's office and fired his gun into his chest. He then walked down to Harvey Milk's office and shot him in the head. Harvey's young friend, Cleve Jones, found him murdered on his office floor. The night of Harvey's assassination, Cleve led a march of thousands in honor of Harvey. Dan White was sentenced to 5 years in prison, and he committed suicide shortly after he was freed. Harvey was turned into a martyr for the gay rights movement, and his impact has been monumental in the fight for marriage equality and against discrimination.
Somewhere in Des Moines or San Antonio, there's a young gay person who all of a sudden realizes that she or he is gay, knows that if the parents find out, they'll be tossed out of the house. The classmates would taunt the child, and the Anita Bryans and John Briggs are doing their bit on TV, and that child had several options. Staying in a closet, suicide, and then one day that child might open a paper and it says homosexual elected in San Francisco, and there are two new options. The option is to go to California, stay in San Antonio and fight. 2 days after I was elected, I got a phone call, and the voice was quite young. It was from Altoona, Pennsylvania, and the person said, "Thanks. And you've got to elect gay people so that that young child and the thousands upon thousands like that child know that there's hope for a better world. There's hope for a better tomorrow. Without hope, not only gays, but those blacks and the Asians, and the disabled, the seniors, the us's, without hope, the us's give up. I know that you cannot live on hope alone, but without it, life is not worth living. And you've got to give them hope." Thank you very much.